Thank you. Good afternoon. And I want to reiterate what Abby said. I've got my chat box open here. So if at any point you have questions, just throw them in and I'll either address them on the fly or collect them for later. So we're going to talk about personal finance. There are probably four components of personal finance that are important to talk about: earning, spending, borrowing, and saving. And basically, personal finance boils down to dealing with these four things. So let's take them one at a time. Start with earning. And when you think about earning, it's important to keep in mind that ultimately people will pay you to do one or both of two things. The first is things that other people don't want to do. So this speaks to your preference and your tolerance. What kind of nonsense are you willing to put up with? Are you willing to get grimy and deal with hard, sweaty, foul work? People will pay you to do that. The other thing people will pay you to do are things that other people can't do. And this speaks to your training and talent. What sorts of things are you able to do that other people simply can't? And this is it. When it comes down to earning money, no matter what it is you do, ultimately you're being paid for one or both of these two things, that you're doing things that other people don't want to do, or you're doing things that other people can't do. So let's talk about the first one, things that other people don't want to do. And I'll give you some examples here. And the numbers I'm going to show you are average for the United States. So some places the numbers will be higher, some places they'll be lower, but these are averages. So a sewage inspector, someone who gets down into the sewage and inspects the pipes and the drainage and all of that, they're paid about $50,000 a year. Garbage collectors are paid on average $60,000 a year. Portable toilet cleaners are paid $60,000. Coal miners are paid $65,000. Crime scene cleaners, these are the people that come in after a grisly crime and clean up, whatever's left. They're paid on average $75,000. And landfill gas operators are paid $100,000. And landfill gas operators are interesting because this kind of hits on a couple of things. One, it's a grimy thing. You're working in a landfill, with decomposing stuff, and it smells horrible and it's dirty and all of that. But also what these people are doing, they're collecting the methane that comes off of the decomposing garbage in the landfill, and the landfill will use this methane to power its equipment. And methane, of course, is explosive. So on top of everything else, not only is it grimy, it's also dangerous. What's interesting about these jobs is none of them require a college degree. These are things that someone with a high school diploma can go and do. And you're being paid here principally because these are nasty jobs that other people don't want to do. To put the numbers in perspective, the average, the median US worker earns $50,000. So if you line up all of the US workers from the lowest income worker to the highest income worker, the guy in the middle is at 50,000. So these jobs that you're seeing here that do not require college degrees, they're paying at least or as much or more than what the middle income American worker earns. So these are things other people don't want to do. Let's talk about things other people can't do. You were born with some kind of raw talent. You can do things. Maybe you're artistic, or you can play music, or you're good at mathematics, or whatever it is. You have some kind of raw talent that you've been born with. And you get some kind of education. Maybe it's a college education, or maybe it's a technical education. You go to technical school, you learn how to do things that other people can't do. You also get on-the-job training, and this is something that people don't pay enough attention to. Often when employers hire someone, they're looking to hire someone at an entry-level position who isn't necessarily skilled in the thing that the company's doing. Rather, they're hiring somebody who has the ability to learn, who has a good work ethic, who's willing to work hard, show up on time, these kinds of things. And the company will train you to do the things that the company needs done. So this is on-the-job training. You learn to do things that are particular to whatever this company does. And this, of course, is valuable. And then you have some relevant experience just from living life. Maybe you take care of, some younger siblings or cousins or something, and you get them ready in the morning and send them off to school and make sure their lunches are packed and this kind of thing. And that doesn't sound like much, but it's actually quite relevant experience, because an employer will look at that and say, well, look, this is something that you did for 4 years, day in and day out, making sure these little kids were taken care of or whatever it is. It demonstrates that you're able to do something that not everybody can do. That is, that you can adhere to some schedule, you can take responsibility for, these smaller people. You can figure out what it is that needs to be done and make a plan and go and do it and this sort of thing. And so all of that is relevant, and it's relevant to all sorts of jobs. It doesn't matter that you're going to have a job that does not involve making lunches for children. That's not the point. The point is, whatever job you have will be a job that involves having to adhere to deadlines, having to do quality work, having to be able to show up on time, all these sorts of experiences that you gained from this life experience that you were dealing with. So all of this stuff together, your talent, your education, your training, your relevant experience, we call this human capital. Human capital is a kind of a summary of the things that you are able to do that perhaps other people can't. So let's talk a little bit about the value of human capital. I'm going to show you numbers here, average numbers for the United States. The typical United States worker, American worker with a high school diploma, will work for 50 years. So you start at age 18, you get your first job, and you'll work through to roughly age 68, maybe a bit longer. So basically 50 years of a career. Over the course of that career, the typical American with a high school diploma will earn about $2.5 million. Some more, some less, but this is the average. Now, suppose you go on for more education, so you develop your human capital more after high school. You go and get an associate's degree. That's a 2-year degree. So that's going to cut 2 years off of your career. That's 2 years you can't work because you're going to be getting this education. So you've got a 48-year career span. But in exchange for losing those 2 years of work, your career-long income rises by about $500,000. So the typical American with a 2-year associate's degree can expect to work about 48 years, and over the course of those 48 years, earn a total of $3 million. Suppose you go further. Suppose you get a bachelor's degree. That's going to cost you 4 years of your life. So you're going to have a 46-year career life. But in exchange, you get more income. The average worker with a bachelor's degree earns over $4 million. And you can keep on going. You can think about getting a master's degree or think about getting a doctoral degree. And by the time you get up to a doctoral degree, you're talking about a career-long income of over $6 million. Now, be careful as you look at this, because I'm not saying that all of you have to run out and get doctoral degrees because that's the right answer. It gives you the most career-long income. That's not the point here. The point here is that you will make, when it comes to personal finance, you'll make some life choices, and you have to choose the balance that's right for you. If you're someone who enjoys studying and you're just built to be in college and learn things, then by all means, go as far as you can, get the doctoral degree, and you'll end up with more income over the course of your career. If, on the other hand, you're someone who, maybe you're quite intelligent, but you're just not interested in formal education, right? You'll do your high school thing, but you want to get out, you want to work, do some things, start creating some things. Maybe you'll learn how to fix engines or become a landscaper, whatever it is. That's fine. But understand there's a pro and a con here. The pro is that you're out of school at age 18. You don't have to keep studying. The con is you're going to be expecting a lower career-long income. So there's no right answer to this. Rather, it's trade-offs. And much of what we're going to deal with in personal finance is a matter not of telling you what the right answer is, but rather presenting you with the trade-offs so that you can make an intelligent decision. You understand the pros and the cons. So there's pros and cons here to developing human capital. Now, people will tell you, particularly since you're high school students, that the key to success is a college degree. I'm a college professor, and I'm telling you that's not correct. A college degree doesn't matter. What matters is the college major. That is, what it is you study when you go to college. I'll show you some examples here. This graph is a bunch of vertical lines. There's like 430 of them here. Each one of those vertical bars represents a different college major. Now, when I talk about college majors here, keep in mind, I'm talking about undergraduates only. So 4-year degrees, no masters, no PhDs, no law degrees, no medical degrees, none of that. Just straight up 4-year degrees. The height of the bar shows you the average amount someone with that degree can expect to earn over the course of his or her career. So on the far left, with the bars going so high, the one on the left, on the far left, almost goes to 7 million, and they go, like basically 4 to 7 million in that range. Those majors are what we call the STEM majors: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. These sorts of majors will return a tremendous income over the course of the graduate's career. And why is this? This goes back to those 2 points I gave you at the beginning of people will pay you to do things that other people don't want to do and other people can't do. All of these majors involve a heavy amount of mathematics and statistics. These are very difficult things that not many people can master. So when you get degrees in these fields, you're able to do things that many, many other people can't do. And that's part of what yields this high income that you can expect with degrees in these fields. So if we move to the right, we get into things like the business majors. Move further to the right, and you start to move into life sciences and then liberal arts. And then to the far right of this chart, you'll see the fine arts: media arts, theater arts, culinary arts, things like this. And if you look at this, what you notice is that there's a huge range of returns here. The major that is most valuable on the far left is petroleum engineering. Someone with a petroleum engineering degree can expect to earn almost $7 million over the course of his or her career. And remember, that's a 4-year degree only, no master's, no PhD. Now, go to the far right of the chart. On the far right of the chart, you have child and family studies. Someone with a child and family studies degree can expect to earn $1.5 million over the course of a career. Now, to put those two numbers in perspective, the average American with a high school diploma, no college at all, the average American with a high school diploma can expect to earn around $2 million over the course of his or her career. So what you notice is there are some majors, there's probably a dozen of them or more, that actually are worth less than a high school diploma. You end up having less market value with those college majors than you do when you came straight out of high school. Now, there are other college majors that have tremendous value. Now, again, take a deep breath here. I'm not saying that you should all go out and major in these STEM things that are on the left that earn lots of money. What I'm saying is that there is a trade-off. You may be someone whose love is theater and dance, and this is what you're built for, and all your life, this is all you've wanted to do. You go to college and you study theater and dance. You're going to be in one of these majors on the far right. And when you get out of college, you will not earn much money. Now, although you won't earn much money, you will be happy. You'll be happy because you'll be doing the thing that you were built to do. This is the thing you love. If instead you go and major in petroleum engineering, when you graduate college, you will earn a tremendous amount of money and you will be miserable. You will be miserable because you're doing something you don't like. So as you look at this, understand there's pros and cons here. You need to weigh what are your talents, what is your love with the market reality. And the point of doing this is so that when you graduate, You don't suddenly say, oh my God, I've got, I'm $30,000 in debt and I can only get a minimum wage job. And you see this on the news when people argue about how we should forgive student loan debt, and they'll interview people who have tremendous amounts of student loan debt and they can only work at Starbucks. And what they never do when they interview these students, these graduates, is to ask, what did you major in? Because I guarantee you, the guy who's working at Starbucks did not major in one of the STEM fields. He majored in something over here on the right. And again, that's not to say that the majors on the right are bad majors that you should avoid. It is to say that if you choose one of them, choose them with open eyes, and don't be surprised when, after you graduate, you have difficulty making your student loan payments. Someone asks here, doesn't income from certain majors fluctuate with people's needs? And yes, it absolutely does. The numbers I'm showing you here are numbers the last year that the data came out. I think it was 2018. So from year to year, these numbers will fluctuate, and they'll fluctuate in part based on our needs. For example, if all of a sudden we develop a technology that makes petroleum obsolete, then all of a sudden those petroleum engineering majors are not going to be earning 7 million. They're going to be earning close to nothing because nobody needs petroleum anymore. So these things will fluctuate on that basis. They'll also fluctuate on the basis of how many people are able and willing to do a particular job. So think about for a moment the Child and Family Studies, which is the lowest value major, $1.5 million. Now stop and think about that for a moment. What do these people do? Many of them will run daycare centers for children. There is nothing more important in this world to a parent than that the children be taken care of well. So this is a job that is of prime importance to parents. But you look at it and you say, well, if it's of such importance to parents, how come the Child and Family Studies majors only make $1.5 million? Because what matters when it comes to wages is not simply how valuable the product is to the person who's paying, how valuable the service is to the parents. What also matters is how many other people are willing and able to do that job. And this goes again back to those first two things I showed you. Why will someone pay you to do something? Because it's something no one else wants to do, or because it's something no one else can do. And when you think about working a daycare center, dealing with children, this is something that most people would want to do, right? Children, they're delightful little things. It's not, very hard work. You play with them, feed them cookies, whatever it is, right? It's not stressful, that job. So it's something lots of people would like to do, and it's something lots of people can do. It doesn't require specific training like with the mathematics or the statistics or something. So because it's a job that many people would like to do, and it's a job that many people can do, there are so many people willing and able to do it that the price doesn't rise very high. It's a low price. Now, contrast that with petroleum engineering. Petroleum engineering hits both of those things. It's something that not many people can do, right? You've got to be trained as an engineer and know the mathematics and all of this stuff. It's also a nasty job. A petroleum engineer spends several months out of the year on an oil derrick somewhere out in the ocean. So he's away from his family and he's dealing with dangerous stuff, and it's grimy stuff, and it's hard work, and it's all of this thing. So it's something that few people can do and few people want to do. And that's why you see the price going so high. So as you see these wages, yes, in part, the wages are a function of how much people value the service, but they're also very much a function of how many other workers are willing and able to do the job. And that's largely what you're seeing drive these differences here. So to go back to the numbers for a moment, these numbers are coming from roughly 2018. They do vary year to year, but they don't vary that much. I would expect that the specific majors may switch positions one year to the next, but I would expect this chart I'm showing you to look 10 years from now very much like it does now. 50 years from now, it may look a lot different than it does now. So that's discussion on earning. Let's talk about spending, the second of the four components of personal finance. think about what influences your spending. One thing is circumstances, right? You're born into a certain place. So maybe you've got elderly parents that you have to take care of, or you have health problems that require, attention. And these things require some amount of spending. And there's nothing you could do about that. That's just the life that you were born into. But then there are other things you can do something about. And these are choices that you make. For example, where you live, how many children you have, what are your personal habits? Let's talk about where you live. The cost of living in California, and I'm just picking 2 states as an example, the cost of living in California is almost 60% more than the cost of living in South Carolina. Right? So the 2 states, at least if you're talking about Southern California, similar climates, they're both coastal states, but the cost of living is 60% more in California than South Carolina. Now, why is this important? It's important because when you get your first job offer, so you go out and you send your resumes out to various places, and what people will have a tendency to do is to look at the high numbers. So let's suppose, for example, you get a job offer in California paying $80,000, and you get a job offer for the same job in South Carolina paying $50,000. Now, most people will look at those 2 numbers and they'll say, well, just ignore the 50,000 because it's way low. Look at the 80,000. That's much higher wage. That's the one I'm going to take. But what you're forgetting is the difference in the cost of living. Because the cost of living in California is 60% higher, it turns out that those 2 jobs are actually the same. The $80,000 job in California will give you the exact same standard of living as the $50,000 job in South Carolina. So the moral of the story is, when you're thinking about personal finance and how much you can earn, you have to also think about how far those dollars go. What's the cost of living in the place you have to live in order to earn that money? And what you often find, particularly if you're talking about a state like California, or New York is very expensive as well, versus Midwestern states, the cost of living can be high enough that the lower paying job in Alabama, for example, is better than the higher paying job in New York City. So this is one thing you have to think about. Another thing you have to think about when it comes to spending is family size. And we don't tend to think about this, right? You get married, you have some kids and that, but you need to think when it comes to personal finance very carefully about this, because the cost of raising a child in the United States is about $17,000 per year. Now, it's not $17,000 every year. Some years it's less, some years it's more, right? When they become kids in junior high and high school, the expenses go up because they're eating more and you need equipment for sports and memberships for whatever it is they do, these sorts of things. The cost of raising the child at age 1 or 2 is much less. But on average, and this is not including college, this is just birth to high school. On average, the average kid in the United States costs his parents $17,000 per year. So if you're going to have one kid, that one kid will cost you from birth to age 17, $280,000, over $250,000. Now, if you're going to have that one kid on a high school diploma salary, that's going to eat 10% of all the money you will ever earn. 10% of your entire career-long income will go to paying for that one kid if you have a high school diploma. If you have a 4-year college degree, 5% of everything you earn over the course of your career will go to paying for that one kid. That's one kid. 2 kids will cost you $440,000. 3 kids will cost you $600,000. When you get up to 5 kids, you're almost at $1 million. The total cost from birth to age 17 for the 5 kids, $920,000. If you're doing that on a high school diploma, that is going to eat 40% of every penny you will ever earn in your life. If you're going to do it on a bachelor's degree, it's going to eat 25% of every penny you'll ever earn over the course of your entire life. And again, I'm not saying there's a right and a wrong answer here. I'm presenting the trade-offs. You may particularly like to have a large family and you want to have lots of kids, and that's fine. They're lots of fun and great to have around, but go in with open eyes and understand what it's going to cost you. So you choose to have 5 kids. That's wonderful. The pros are you got 5 kids. The con is, you're not going to be taking family vacations. You're not going to have the latest car. Your clothes are going to be secondhand, but that's the trade-off you make. If you choose to have 1 kid, that's much less expensive. You can buy these other things in exchange, but then the downside is you only have 1 kid. So as you think about personal finance, one of the biggest decisions you will make is where you live. The second biggest decision you'll make is how much of a family do you want to have? There's no right and wrong answer, but think about the pros and the cons with open eyes. Something else that matters tremendously when it comes to spending that people don't think about nearly enough are your personal habits. And I'll give you a simple example here that looks like it's not a big deal. Let's suppose that you're done with whatever level of education you choose to do, and you've got your first decent paying job. And so you're out there, you're doing work, and each day, of course, you're going to have lunch. The question is, should you buy lunch each day, or should you pack a lunch and take it to work? And a lot of people will say something like, well, a lunch eating out, every day is $15 a day. And okay, it's $15, but on the other hand, this is your first use. This is a serious paying job that you have. And you would say things like, I've worked hard to get to where I am. I deserve this kind of thing. And my colleagues are going out as well. It's some time I can spend with them. So it's worth it. It's only $15, right? Remember that, only $15. Okay. What's the alternative? Well, the alternative is you could pack a lunch and take it with you. And let's suppose that packing the lunch and taking it with you is going to cost you $2. So there's a $13 difference here. You're about to make a financial decision that involves a $13 swing, right? Up or down. Now, a lot of people would look at that and say, this is why are we even wasting our time talking about this? It's $13. But do the math. Over the course of a 45-year career, you'll work 255 days out of each year. That's 11,475 lunches at a potential cost of $13 each. That's if you choose to go out for lunch versus carrying your lunch in with you. Do the math, that's $150,000. Your choice to go out and buy lunch every day ends up costing you $150,000. Now, you might say in response, okay, it's $150,000, but it's $150,000 spread over 45 years. So spread over 45 years, this isn't a big deal. In fact, it's $13 a day. Except we're forgetting something. The thing we're forgetting is that $13 a day, the extra $13 you're spending to go out for lunch, if you didn't spend it to go out for lunch, you could have put it into a retirement fund. And let's suppose that you put it into a retirement fund that pays 7% interest. And that's reasonable interest particularly if it's going into a retirement fund. So here's what you're doing. You're going to say, I can go out for lunch every day. It's going to cost me $13 a day, or I can pack my lunch, take it with me, and that costs me $2. The $13, instead of spending it on lunch, I'm going to put it in my retirement fund earning 7% interest. Well, if you do the math, at the end of your 45-year career, those little $13 a day have added up to $950,000. This seemingly immaterial question, should I go out for lunch or should I carry my lunch in? It's only $13, but it actually ends up being $1 million decision. Quite literally, your decision to go out for lunch versus carrying the lunch in has a $1 million impact on how much money you will have at retirement. Now take that little example and apply it to all sorts of other seemingly small decisions you make. So you have Netflix and you have Amazon Prime. Do you need both of them? Well, Netflix has some movies that Amazon Prime doesn't. Okay, but Netflix is going to cost you whatever it costs you, $15, $20 a month. If you got rid of the Amazon, or the Netflix, that's $15 or $20 a month you could put into your retirement fund. And over the course of a 45-year career, including the interest that you'll earn, that's going to be worth several hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you start thinking about your behavior, your habits in this way, you'll see that there are tons of little decisions you make on a day-to-day basis that seem to be irrelevant. But because you make them every single day, those little bits of apparently irrelevant money, if you made those decisions better and put that money in the retirement fund, those little bits of money will add up to a tremendous amount of money come retirement. So we think about earning. How much can you earn, and why is it that people pay you money to do the things you do, and what's the value of having various degrees and spending more time in your education? And we think about spending. How you spend your money matters just as much as how much you earn. And now we could talk about borrowing. So borrowing is kind of akin to the spending, except what we're going to do here is spend money that we haven't yet earned. So the idea of borrowing is I'm going to get some money from a lender, spend the money now, repay it later when I have more income later. So I'm going to be borrowing, I'm going to be spending money that I currently don't own. The biggest decision you're going to make over the next decade of when it comes to borrowing is, should you borrow or should you save up to go to college? Now, a lot of people will say things like, well, the thing to do is to save up to go to college so that you can graduate debt-free. Let's think about that for a moment. I'm going to give you numbers that are average for the United States. So let's suppose that you could, with your high school diploma, go out on the job market and get a $30,000 job. And when you complete your college degree, you could go out in the job market and get a $50,000 job. And those are typical numbers for the United States. So high school diploma, $30,000 job, college degree, $50,000 job. And let's suppose, for the sake of argument, that whatever job you get annual raises of 3%. So 3% each year, which is reflecting the fact that the longer you're on the job, the more valuable you become to the employer, because you acquire skills. This is the on-the-job training thing. You acquire skills and knowledge that make you more valuable. So the annual pay raises that are reflecting your increase in value, we'll say these are 3% per year. And let's suppose that whatever it is you choose to do, work after high school or go on for college and then work, you're going to save 15% of what you earn. So every dollar you earn, you save 15% of it. And let's suppose that college costs $40,000. So after you're done with scholarships and grant money and all this stuff, it's going to cost you $40,000 for the 4 years. Okay. What happens if you save for college? So I'm going to track you through, and here you are at age 18, and you say, okay, I'm not going to college yet. I'm going to get a job. I've just graduated high school. I'm going to save money. I'm going to save up the full $40,000 so I can pay cash for college. So here you are at age 18. You're earning $30,000, and you save 15% of it. That's $5,000 you put in your savings account. A year goes by. Now you're 19, and you get your 3% raise. So now you're making $31,000. And you save 15% of that. You put it into your savings account, and now your savings has grown to $9,000. That's pretty good after just 2 years. Another year goes by. You're now 20. You're earning $32,000. You save 15% of it, put it into your savings account, and your savings account is now $14,000. And you keep on doing this. It's going to take you 8 years to save up the $40,000 it costs for the college degree. So By the end of age 25, you've saved your $40,000 and you're now going to enroll in college. So here you are, age 26, and you're a full-time student, so you're not earning any money now. Your income drops to zero. And your savings drops by 10,000. You had to write a check to the university for $10,000 for your first year. Another year goes by. You're now a sophomore in college. You're still earning nothing. You're a full-time student. And your savings has dropped by another 10,000. You had to write a $10,000 check to the university for your second year of education. And this goes on for 4 years. By the end of the 4 years, you're now 29 years old. You've got no income. You're a full-time student. You've got no savings because you cut the checks to the university, but you're now graduating. You're graduating with a 4-year degree and you are completely debt-free. Okay, so age 30, you get your first post-college job and it's paying $50,000. And you do the same thing you've been doing all along. You save 15% of what you earn. So you save 15% of the $50,000, that's $8,000. Another year goes by, you're now 31, you're earning $52,000, save 15% of it, your savings is now built up to $15,000. Keep on doing this, and let's take you out to age 35. By age 35, you're earning $58,000 and you have almost $50,000 in savings. Now, a lot of people look at this and say, this is the responsible thing to do because you worked, you saved up for college, you paid cash for the thing, you graduated debt-free, and everything you earn after you graduate, you get to keep that because there's no loans that you have to pay back. And here you are, age 35, you're earning $58,000, and you have $49,000 sacked away in your savings account. Okay. Now, let's repeat this scenario, but this time, instead of saving up to go to college, you take a loan. What happens if you borrow to go to college? So here you are at age 18 and you have graduated high school. You're now a freshman in college. You're earning nothing. You're a full-time student and your savings is actually negative. It's negative $10,000 because you had to borrow $10,000 to pay for the first year of college. That's money you're going to have to pay back. A year goes by. You're now 19, still earning nothing. You're a full-time student. And now you're $20,000 in debt. You keep on doing this, you're going to be done with your 4 years of college at age 21. And here you are, you haven't earned a penny in your life and you're $40,000 in debt. And this is the thing that people point to and say, oh my God, what's going on here? This kid hasn't earned any money, he's got $40,000 in debt. Okay. But what happens at age 22? At age 22, you get your first post-college job. And the post-college job pays $50,000. And what do? You save 15% of that. So you take 15% of what you earned and you put it toward your college debt. So your college debt drops down to $33,000. Another year goes by, you're earning $52,000. You take 15% of that, you put it toward your college debt. Your college debt's now down to $25,000. You keep on doing this and it's going to take you 5 years to pay off your college loans. So by age 26, you're earning $56,000. You've now paid off all of your college loans. From this point on, everything you earn, you get to keep. You're debt-free. So here you are at age 27. You earn $58,000. You save 15% of that. That's $9,000. That's in your savings now. And you keep on doing this. And when you hit age 35, look at what happens. By age 35, you're earning $73,000 and you have $88,000 in the bank. Now compare these two scenarios. The scenario where you worked out of high school to save up the money to pay for college, you went to college, you graduated debt-free. And the second scenario where you went straight to college, you took out loans to pay for it, and then after you graduated, you had to pay those loans back. Look at the two scenarios. You are way better off in that second scenario where you borrowed. You've got much more savings, you're earning much more money, And why is that? It's because when you saved the money to go to college in the first scenario, you had to work 8 years. It took you 8 years to save up enough money to pay cash for college. When you borrowed, you didn't have that 8 year delay. You went to college immediately, which means you started your career, you started your post college career 8 years sooner. And the fact that you started your post college career 8 years sooner is what causes you to end up financially to be way better off. Now, be careful, because first off, how much you can earn when you graduate varies based on what kind of major you select. I'm looking at the average here. So we've already talked about the fact that there are low paying majors. And with the low paying majors, none of these numbers apply to you. So that's one thing to think about. The other thing to think about is this is not a story about borrowing being a good idea. It's a story about borrowing being a good idea when you're borrowing for the purpose of increasing your human capital. If you were to borrow to buy a car or borrow to go out for dinner, that's not good borrowing. That's bad borrowing, because the borrowing is not increasing your value. You're just consuming it. This kind of borrowing is good borrowing. In fact, we use different words for it. We would call the one borrowing, that is what I'm calling bad borrowing. The good borrowing, we use a different word. We call it investment. Investment is when you're taking money in and you're going to put it into something that's going to create more income for you in the future. Here, the borrowing to go to college is good borrowing, provided you're studying something that has high market value, because it gets you onto the job market 8 years sooner. And so you get eight more years of career, and that 8 more years of career added up with all of the money that you're earning ends up being a huge chunk of change. In fact, if you extend these numbers out to age 67, by the time you retire, you're actually over $1 million better off taking the loan and going to college than you would have been if you saved up the money and paid cash. Again, this is $1 million decision you're making. So we talk about earning, we talk about spending, we talk about borrowing. Last thing to talk about when it comes to personal finance is saving. And when I talk about saving, people, I'm going to pause for a second because I got a question from Robert. Robert says, can't students go to the cheapest school they can afford and work while going to school and still graduate debt free? Yes, all of that is true, Robert. You can go to a cheaper school. You can work while you're in school. Now, working while you're in school is fine, because the key to this whole thing, the reason that you're better off with the borrowing, is because you started college immediately at age 18. If you can work while you're in college and start at age 18, that's fine. But if you're talking about working, suppose we pick a cheaper school and we work and it only takes us 3 years to save up enough to go to college. That's better than taking 8 years to save up enough to go to college, but it's not as good as going to college immediately. What's making all of these numbers work out in your favor for borrowing is the fact that you're getting into college as soon as possible. Every year you delay costs you a tremendous amount. When I give these talks about personal finance, students are always kind of interested in answering this question of how do I become a millionaire, right? And enough students have asked it in Q&A that I'll make you slides and we can talk about it. What's the path to becoming a millionaire? It's actually, I would say there are two paths here. One path is likely not going to get you there. The other path will get you there, almost definitely. The path that will likely not get you there is the one everybody thinks about. It's, I want to invest in Dogecoin or, something, or my friend's got an idea for a business and we're going to go out and start this business. We're going to become multimillionaires. That path does play out. It does lead you to becoming a millionaire, but only rarely. it's a much higher probability that that path will not lead to you becoming a millionaire. The path I want to talk about is not flashy like that first path. It's not going to get you to millionaire status overnight. It's going to take you a while, but in exchange, you're almost guaranteed to get there. So let's talk about this second path to becoming a millionaire. It requires two things. The first is time, and the second is disciplined saving. And by disciplined saving, what I mean is you're saving a reasonable amount and you're doing it every single paycheck. Paycheck after paycheck. It doesn't matter whether, this is a good month and you got lots of money, or a bad month, you got little money, or you had expenses, or whatever it is, doesn't matter. Every single paycheck, you're going to save the same amount. That's disciplined saving. So these two ingredients, time and disciplined saving, get you to millionaire status. Again, I'm going to show you actual numbers, and I'm going to show you actual numbers for high school graduates. So what I want to drive home here is the fact that even if you only have a high school diploma, you can still become a millionaire, actually relatively easily. If you become a petroleum engineer, you'll get there even faster, right? But I want to show you kind of like the worst case scenario, that you're a high school graduate and you've got amongst the lower paying jobs. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to save 15% of your pay, every single paycheck, 15%. And you're going to invest this at 7% interest. And again, 7% is kind of reasonable. You would expect, particularly for a young person, that your savings would be going mostly into equities, into stocks. The average return on stocks is around 10%. Subtract 3% for inflation. So that's a net of 7%. So what I'm showing you here is a reasonable thing. If you save 15% of your pay and you put it into a diversified portfolio of stocks, you should expect to get 7% after inflation. So here we are at age 18. The average 18-year-old with a high school education earns $23,530. That's as of last year. Save 15% of that. So 15% of that is $35.30. And you'll get interest. You get 7% interest. That's $124. And so at the end of the year, you've got some, basically $35.30 in savings. You earn the interest over the course of the year. That's age 18. And a year goes by. Here you are, 19. The average 19-year-old with a high school diploma earns about $23,530. You save 15% of it. You earn a little bit of interest. Your savings balance rises. You go on, and you notice what's going on here. The amount of interest you're earning, it's really low, right? This is actually kind of depressing. You earned $100 the first year, you're $600 the third year, but still $600 over the course of a whole year, that's not much. And so it's kind of depressing. You look at this, you say, why am I going through all of this hassle of saving 15% of my pay, and the amount of interest I'm earning isn't that great? This is the thing about interest. It follows this exponential pattern that it's going to be low, it's going to be low, it's going to be low, and all of a sudden it's going to pick up. And before you know it, it's going to be incredibly high. So watch what happens here. You keep on doing this, and we get to age 25. And by age 25, the average American with a high school diploma who's 25 years old is earning around $38,000. You save 15% of that, that's $5,600. And look at the interest you're earning, $2,300. Okay, it took you, 7 years to get here? But all of a sudden you're earning a decent amount of saving, a decent amount of interest. It's not great, but it's a lot better than the few $100s you were earning before. Okay, keep moving forward. Another 5 years goes by. You're now 30. The average American with a high school diploma who's 30 years old earns around $38,000. You're saving 15% of that, but look at what's happened to your interest. All of a sudden, when you hit age 30, the amount of interest you're earning is as much as the amount of money you're saving. So the interest is becoming a really big deal at this point. The interest is going to start to contribute more to your savings than your actual savings is contributing. Let's push time forward some more. Here's age 45. By age 45, you're earning $51,000. Look at the interest, $25,000 per year. Per year, you're making $25,800 just in interest. It dwarfs the amount you're saving. You're just saving $7,600 a year. You're earning almost $26,000 in interest. Let's go forward some more. Here's age 55. And look what happens. By age 55, you could actually retire right now. Because why? The interest you're earning each year is actually somewhat higher than the amount of money you earn at your job. You're at your job, you're earning $51,000 a year. In interest, you're earning $56,000 a year. You could retire. You could walk away from your job right now and just live off of the interest of your savings. You'd have basically the same income. But let's not do that. Let's keep working. You worked age 58. Now you're a millionaire. It took you from age 18 to age 58. So it took you 40 years. That's the first of the two ingredients, time. The second ingredient, disciplined saving. You saved 15% of every single paycheck. That plus the interest started to accumulate like a snowball. It gets bigger, it gets bigger, it gets bigger, until by age 58, you've got $1 million in your savings. And remember, the numbers I'm showing you are adjusted for inflation. This is not like, well, I'm going to have $1 million, but it'll be 40 years in the future, won't buy much. This is $1 million in today's terms, in today's purchasing power. It's adjusted for inflation. You actually will be a millionaire in 40 years. But let's not stop here. Let's keep going. Let's suppose you work until age 70. By age 70, you will retire a multimillionaire. You'll have $2.4 million in your savings. And not only will you retire a multimillionaire, look at how much interest you're earning. You're earning way more in interest than what you're earning from your job. Not only do you retire a multimillionaire, but your standard of living goes up tremendously. All of this gets you to millionaire status in about 40 years. And you keep on going, you become multimillionaire status. Again, it requires two things. It requires time, it requires disciplined saving. Don't underestimate the value of the time, because I show this picture to students and I say, this is what you can do. You start at age 18 and you become a millionaire. And I'll hear students say things like, well, okay, this sounds pretty good, but at the moment I only have a minimum wage job, and I really want to save up to buy a new computer or whatever it is you want to buy. And so I'm not going to start saving now. I'll wait until I graduate from college. Okay, but that's like 4 or 5 years into the future. Those 4 or 5 years become really important. The thing you've got going for yourself right now is your youth. You could start tomorrow and become a millionaire before you hit age 60. That's something that someone who's 45 can't do. Someone who's 45 and decides, okay, today I'm going to start saving in a serious way so I can become a millionaire. It's likely impossible, because that 45-year-old has lost the first ingredient, the ingredient of time. The more time you have, and every single year matters, the more time you have to save, the more likely you are to end up the multimillionaire. One other thing about saving is the psychology. The psychology is very important, right? So we're going to step out of finance here for a moment and talk about the human condition. The more savings you have, the more you'll want to save. It's going to be painful at first, particularly if you've got a minimum wage job and you're just saving, a few dollars here and a few dollars there. And on the one hand, it's very painful for you to put this money into savings. On the other hand, it's such a small amount that you're putting into savings. You look at it, you say, what am I doing here with putting this money in? Because I only have a few $100s at the end of it and I'm enduring lots of pain. What happens here is you've got this hump you have to get over, and the hump might take a year, might take 2 years, but you get over this hump of you're saving, you don't see the point of it, it's really painful, you look at your savings balance, it's not that great. After a couple of years, that savings balance becomes large enough that your psychology changes, and all of a sudden you become very interested in saving more. because you start to see the benefit of doing so. And all of a sudden, the 15% that you put into the saving, you no longer think of it as painful of, I could have bought something with this money. Instead, you think the other way. Every time you have to buy something, I have to get new tires for the car. The first thing you think is, oh my God, I really would have preferred to put that money into saving. You become interested in doing this. And the more interested you become in doing this, the easier it becomes to do. Second important thing about the psychology of saving is you got to reverse your thinking. The way most people think about saving is they think, okay, I've earned this money, it comes in the door, and I've got to spend on things. I've got, rent, and I've got food, and I've got clothing, and all these things. I got to pay gas for the car, and then what's left here, this is what I've got left to save. And someone like that will say, well, if I want to save more, what do I have to do? Well, I'm going to cut back on some of my expenses over here so I have more money at the end that I can save. That's the wrong way to do it. The right way to do this is to reverse the process. You get money coming in the door, and the very first thing you do is you slice off 15% of it and you put it into savings. Then you ask, what are my expenses? Well, I've got rent, I've got food, I've got this, I've got that. And you say, well, my God, what happens? My expenses are higher than the money I have. What happens is you cut back on your expenses. It becomes, if you do your spending first and your saving second, it becomes way too easy to expand your spending so there's not much left to save. If you do it the other way, do your savings first and your spending second, it becomes much easier to cut back on the spending, cut back on what you're spending to fit the money that's left over. So these are two psychological things you have to think about when it comes to saving. And then finally, I've talked about saving the money and earning 7% interest and all of this. And I said, what you'll likely do is put it into stocks, while you're young. Here's the thing. You want to leave your savings, your portfolio, we call it your portfolio, all the stocks, the bonds that you own. You want to leave this to professionals. There are, throughout the world, 630,000 publicly traded companies. Each one of those companies issues stock. And there are literally millions of financial assets that are based on those stocks. If you're looking to invest your savings into stocks, bonds, these sorts of things, there are literally millions of options. This is something that is so complex that you have professionals do it for you. You don't do it. And we call these things portfolio managers. You find a portfolio manager and you put your money with them. Now, you don't have to worry about that until you get, above $10,000. But once you get above $10,000, you'll be old enough that this will be a natural thing that you'll start looking for portfolio managers. So this is all I have on personal finance, and I'll give a plug. If you haven't seen it already, check out my podcast, Words and Numbers, where we talk about things like this. We talk about economics and finance. We also talk about government as it relates to particularly young people in the world today. And Abby has shown up, which means I have to stop talking.
We can definitely have some time to answer a few questions. We've got some in the Q&A box. First, what exactly is the difference between a major and a minor? Do they have to relate to each other when you're in school?
No, they don't have to relate to each other. A major is typically 25 to 30 credits. So that's, let me say in other language, there's basically about 10 courses that you would have to take for a major and less for a minor. Maybe 6 courses, maybe 5 would get you a minor. And the wise thing to do, let's go back to the guy whose love is theater and dance, is going to major in theater and dance, and the person says, look, this is what I love, but I know I'm not going to be able to earn much money. A wise thing to do, major in theater and dance, is what you love, right? You're going to be happy, but take a minor in business. You're going to take, 18 credits, 6 classes in business. Maybe you can even have enough time to do a double minor. So you take some marketing, you take some finance. It gives you something to fall back on when you realize that you can't get a job in the thing that you love.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I have a question from Robert Nolan in the chat box. Can't students go to the cheapest school that they can afford and work while going to school, still graduate debt-free and start a career at age 22/23? Also, if borrowing for college is good, why is the default rate higher than any other debt and not dischargeable in bankruptcy?
Yeah. So I covered the first part of this question earlier, but I didn't hit the second one. If borrowing for college is good, why is the default rate higher? Because borrowing for college is good, provided that you're studying something that has high market value. So again, when you hear people complaining about I have all this college debt and I can't repay my loans and all of this, I guarantee you they majored in something on the right-hand side of that picture I showed you. So and often what happens is the news people will be interviewing somebody who didn't take out the loans and go to a state school, they went to Harvard. Well, for Lord's sake, if you're going to study theater and dance, don't go to Harvard. It's going to cost you $80,000 and you're going to be working at Starbucks by the time you're done. So yeah, clearly that's bad borrowing. The point of the borrowing, what makes it good, is that it increases. Sorry, let me rephrase this. What can make the borrowing good is that you use the money to study something that gives you a high market value. If you borrow and study something that doesn't give you a high market value, then you got a problem.
Awesome. Thank you. I have a 16-year-old asking if we should try to do stocks now.
Yeah, so this is a good question. The answer is yes and no. And the yes part is if you get something like an app like Robinhood or something and play around with stocks and buy and sell things, it's a great experience. You'll learn lots of things about stocks, but understand what you are doing is not investing, you're playing. And so whatever money you're messing with, make sure it's money you can afford to lose. Because serious investing requires training. In fact, you get a degree, you can get multiple degrees that train you how to invest well. Don't ever attempt to buy and sell stocks using serious money in your serious saving. Leave that to the professionals. Just understand that what you're doing with Robinhood, the point is not to make money, the point is to learn.
If you're interested in learning more about stocks and bonds, next week Ant is going to go a little bit more in depth into stocks and bonds, same time next Tuesday. So feel free to join that if you're interested. All right, last question. Does this mean that everybody has to go to college? I plan not to go to college or go to community college.
Yeah, no, the answer there is very much no. You can make a wonderful living and be quite happy not going to college. In fact, I would advise you, unless you have something in mind, I want to study finance or I want to study, engineering, whatever it is, don't go. In fact, think carefully about going to a technical school. Learn a trade, learn how to be a plumber, a master welder, an electrician. Those jobs are actually pay more than most college degrees. And the reason they pay more is because we have spent in this country the past half century telling students that the key to success is to go to college. And so we push them all to college, and now there's a severe shortage of master electricians and plumbers and welders. So you can make a tremendous amount of money. A late career plumber can easily make six figures.